Okay, we're live.
All right, and I'll call the Planning Committee meeting to order. Can everybody hear me? All right, I'm doing well right out of the gate. Welcome to our virtual Planning Committee meeting in accordance with the physical distancing requirements. Due to COVID-19, Planning Committee is meeting virtually. Members of Council, Executive Management, and the City Clerk are participating via video conference. Members of the senior management team are not visible, but available to answer questions as we need. Tonight, we have two public meetings on tonight's agenda. Although registration prior to the meeting was encouraged, if you have not yet registered and you wish to speak tonight, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca, all one word, cityclerks@barrie.ca, or call 797-5353 and staff will send you the information you need to be able to participate in the public meeting tonight. The first public meeting is to review an application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by the Jones Consulting Group on behalf of 970 Mapleview Inc. And those are for lands known municipally as 932 Mapleview Drive East. The second public meeting was actually initiated by the city. It's a city-initiated amendment to the Community Improvement Plan to improve the overall administration of the program. Members of Planning Committee will be listening to the presentations and any comments from the public heard during the public meetings, but we will not be making comments, debating, or asking questions tonight. Members of Planning Committee will have an opportunity to provide comments regarding the applications at the time the staff reports are considered by Planning Committee at a later date. And as I mentioned, as the purpose of the public meetings is to hear from the public, we will allow the ward councillor to ask questions of staff at the end, just to raise any issues that have arisen in the neighborhood. And the purpose of the questions, of course, is to request clarification. Any interested persons who are wishing further notification of the staff reports for the two matters tonight should email the Legislative Services branch at cityclerks@barrie.ca. Okay, Ms. Banfield, Director of Development Services, could you confirm that notification was conducted in accordance with the Planning Act for the public meetings tonight?
Yes, Mayor Lehman, it was.
Thank you very much. I'll now call on Kaylee Robbins from the Jones Consulting Group to provide a presentation concerning the application for a zoning bylaw amendment for 932 Mapleview Drive East. Ms. Robbins.
Hi, good evening. Do I share my screen or will someone share the screen for me? Oh, I can do it. Here we go. Okay. Okay, can everyone see the presentation fine?
We can now. Yep, go ahead.
Perfect. Okay, so good evening, everyone, council staff, members of the public. Thanks. Sorry, just trying to figure out my screen here. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. My name is Kaylee Robbins, and I am from the Jones Consulting Group. I'm a planner, and I'm here on behalf of 970 Mapleview Inc. To provide details regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for 932 Mapleview Drive East and a red line revision to draft approved plan of subdivision for the lands located at 932, 970, 1002, and 1006 Mapleview Drive East. So here with me tonight as an attendee is Sal Crimmy, the project manager for 970 Mapleview Drive East, and Ray Duhamel, planner at the Jones Consulting Group. So the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to rezone 932 Mapleview Drive to neighborhood residential from the current rural residential zoning carried over from the town of Innisfil zoning bylaw. And the purpose of the red line revision application is to integrate 932 Mapleview Drive with the draft approved plan of subdivision for 970, 1002, and 1006 Mapleview Drive East. So the subject lands are located along Mapleview Drive East, west of Prince William Road and east of 20th Side Road. And the subject lands have a total area of 0.17 hectares or approximately 1,700 square meters with approximately 38 meters of frontage along Mapleview Drive East. So the lands currently contain a single detached dwelling that will be demolished. The dwelling is currently being serviced with a private well and septic system, which will be professionally decommissioned at the appropriate time. So the subject lands are proposed to be integrated with the draft approved adjacent lands, which are just outlined in red here. The subject lands and draft approved lands are located within the Hewitt secondary plan area. The surrounding land uses to the north, east, and south are currently generally agricultural with some single detached dwellings. I believe there's just some here if you can see my mouse. However, the majority of these lands are owned by developers and have either been approved for development or designated for future development. The lands to the west of the subject lands contain residential uses consisting of single detached dwellings, semi-detached, and townhouses. And there are also some community services and facilities further west where you can see where I've identified park and an institutional use there. So the lands are currently, So this is the red line revised plan of subdivision. The application is proposed to integrate the subject lands with this approved plan of subdivision. The zoning bylaw amendment will rezone the lands to neighborhood residential, which is the approved zoning for the majority of the subdivision, with the exception of the mixed use areas and parkland. So the subdivision was originally approved in June 2018 and has been subject to 2 other red line revision applications, one of which was approved in July 2019, and the second was approved in May 2020. So the only revision to the approved plan of subdivision is the inclusion of the lands at 932 Mapleview Drive East. So the lands are currently zoned rural residential in the town of Innisfil zoning bylaw, which was carried over through the Barrie-Innisfil Boundary Adjustment Act. This bylaw remains in effect until the lands are rezoned. So we propose to rezone the lands to neighborhood residential in accordance with the approved Hewitt zoning framework, and we are requesting no special provisions. So the applications will result in an additional 4 lots, which I've highlighted here in red. The 4 lots will have a frontage of about 10 meters and depths ranging from 38 to 40 meters. The lots will accommodate 4 single detached dwellings. And we've also proposed a road widening for Mapleview Drive East, which will be consistent with the approved road widening of the adjacent subdivision. So the lots will have direct access to Nottingham Road, which is a future local road with an 18-meter wide right-of-way. So with the additional 4 lots, the total number of units within this subdivision is 903, with 449 of those being single detached lots, 379 being street townhouses, and 67 units are identified in the mixed use blocks, which will develop through a future site plan application. And there are also 8 future lots. So a lot of technical work has been completed in support of the proposed rezoning and red line revision applications. All these reports and plans can be accessed on the city's proposed development page website for anyone interested in reviewing these materials. Many of these items were updates to the original report submitted for the plan of subdivision and rezoning application for 970, 1002, and 1006 Mapleview Drive East. And the original reports are also on the proposed developments page for viewing. So all development is required to be consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to the growth plan and Lake Simcoe protection plan. As such, we reviewed the applications in accordance with the applicable policies and note that the overall subdivision, including the additional 4 lots, is proposed at transit supportive densities and is located along a future planned transit route. The current zoning application includes 4 single detached dwellings. However, we are proposing to integrate it with the approved subdivision, which also includes street townhouses and future units within the mixed use blocks. And the builder also offers second suite packages. So the applications efficiently use proposed and existing infrastructure specifically infrastructure work that's currently underway in the Hewitt secondary plan area. And lastly, the lands do not contain any natural heritage features, so no impacts will result from the applications. So as mentioned, the lands are located within the Hewitt secondary plan area, which is a master planned community. Approval of the secondary plan included years of background studies, technical work, and public consultation, which resulted in the master plan shown on the screen here. So the subject lands are designated residential area and are located within phase 1 of the Hewitt secondary plan area. So development is required to conform to the official plan and the Hewitt secondary plan. So in accordance with these policies, the applications propose to add low density residential uses to an approved subdivision that contains a range of dwelling sizes and unit types. We are not proposing any changes to the approved road network. And lastly, the subject lands are located in close proximity to community services and facilities, such as a parkland within the approved subdivision, just located here where my mouse is, a public secondary school to the west, which I believe is just around here, and then a future public school to the northeast, which is just around here where my mouse is. So if approved, the applications will facilitate 4 additional single detached dwelling lots to be integrated with an approved draft plan of subdivision. The proposed development positively contributes to the supply of housing, and it will efficiently utilize existing and proposed infrastructure. In my professional opinion, the applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement and conform to the growth plan, Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, and City of Barrie official plan. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Robbins. I'll just call on Michelle Banfield now, the Director of Development Services, to give us an update on the status of the applications. Ms. Banfield.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. So planning staff are completing the technical review of this application to add those 4 new lots to the surrounding draft plan of subdivision. This application for zoning is needed to change the zoning from that in the Town of Innisfil zoning bylaw. So staff are reviewing the justification of the proposed amendments, the potential impacts on the surrounding neighborhood, and the integration of the proposed lots into the plan of subdivision. A detailed analysis of all of these matters will be included in the staff report when it's brought back to Planning Committee for their consideration. So the next steps are to hear from the public tonight, although as you mentioned, Mayor Lehman, there aren't anybody registered, but listening to tonight and any other feedback that we may hear, as well as the technical comments from our staff and our agency partners, and then hoping to bring a staff report back in the next quarter of 2021. All submission materials, key dates, and everything associated with this application are available on the city's proposed development webpage under Ward 10. And alternatively, you can contact the file manager, Dana Sedeby, directly. So that concludes everything on my end, and I thank everybody for their attention.
Thanks very much, Ms. Banfield. I'll say again, if members of the public have not yet registered but have tuned in tonight and do want to speak at this public meeting, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353 for the information. You need to do that right now, though, because with nobody else registered, we would otherwise just go to the ward councillor and then conclude the meeting. So, Madam Clerk, have we had anybody call in or email to register during the course of the meeting?
No, Mayor Lehman, we have not.
Yeah, not too surprised given it's a very small application. This is Ward 10, so Councillor McCann, did we have any questions or clarification? No, you don't, sir. Okay, with that then, if nobody else has called in, I will declare this meeting concluded. Thank you, Ms. Robbins, for coming to present this application, and we'll look forward to the staff report on that one. The second public meeting tonight is a city-initiated rezoning, or sorry, amendment to the community improvement plan. Chapter. Just get my notes here. And again, I'll just remind members of the public, if you're interested in speaking at this public meeting, same instructions, email cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353 to get the information on how to connect to the meeting. I'll now call on Andrew Gamero, planner from the Development Services Department, to give us the presentation on these proposed amendments to the CIP. Mr. Gamero.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Can you guys see my screen clearly? Perfect, thank you. All right, so good evening, Mayor Lehman and members of Planning Committee. Sorry, a technical glitch there. So the purpose of this evening's meeting is to provide members of Planning Committee and the public with an overview of some proposed amendments to the city's Community Improvement Plan, also known as the CIP. So the purpose of the CIP, as some may know, is to provide financial incentives to support key planning and growth management objectives in the city. Broadly, the three objectives of the CIP include facilitating the development of a mix of uses within the urban growth center and the intensification corridors, supporting the preservation of built heritage within the built boundary, and finally, facilitating the development of affordable housing units across the city. So on the screen before you, you'll see a map of the CIP project area, which includes the city's built boundary, which is identified in blue. And a specific focus is placed on the city's strategic growth areas, such as the Urban Growth Center, which is identified in red, just on the west side of Kempenfelt Bay, and as well as the intensification corridors, which include Yonge Street, Essa Road, Dunlop Street, Duckworth Street, and Bayfield Street. And I'd just like to note that the proposed amendments that I'll be discussing this evening do apply to the entire CIP project area. So the CIP document, or the current document, is still fairly new. It was approved by council a little over a year ago. So through the administration of the CIP over the last year or so, planning staff have identified two possible text amendments that could be made to the CIP, just to introduce some efficiencies to the process and simply improve the overall administration of the program. So the first amendment, which is on the screen there, seeks to reduce the number of application intake periods from 3 cycles to 2 cycles per year. Specifically, the city is looking to have the first cycle run from January 1st to March 31st, and the second from July 1st to October 31st. And staff feel that this amendment would improve the administration of the program by reducing the amount of staff time at all levels that's spent on processing and reviewing applications. So we feel there might be some benefit to consolidate the processing and review of the applications into 2 cycles, just to consider everything at once rather than structuring it out throughout the year. It just saves on meeting times and stuff like that. And we still feel that even if this amendment were to be approved, it would still provide applicants with ample opportunity to submit applications for funding. Together, the 2 intake periods would provide members of the public or applicants with approximately a 7-month window to submit applications. So the second amendment is with respect to the timing of payment for redevelopment grants for application fees and development charges. So currently, redevelopment grants for development charges and application fees are paid to applicants following the redevelopment and impact reassessment of a property. What planning staff are proposing is that redevelopment grants for application fees and development charges be paid to applicants at the time of a building permit application, similar to the model that we use for the Affordable Housing Grant Program. This approach would improve the administration of the program by eliminating the need to prepare check requisitions following the completion of a project, particularly for development charge grants, which can be fairly substantial. Also, we feel that issuing grant payments at the time of a building permit application would also assist applicants in covering the upfront costs associated with development, thereby making it a bit easier for developers to get their projects off the ground and move forward with construction. We feel this is particularly important for large-scale projects within the urban growth center and the intensification corridors where redevelopment and development are generally encouraged. And on that note, I just wanted to identify that This proposed change wouldn't mean simply providing funds up front to the successful applicant, let's say in the form of a check, and then sending them on their way. Instead, it would rather be an at-source reduction in the fees payable at the time of the building permit. And it would also be secured through a CIP agreement between the city and the applicant and would be registered on title of the property. So really, it would just be an internal transfer of fees from the CIP reserve to offset those application fees and the development charges. And the risk to the city in making that change would be pretty low. For example, if an applicant were to cancel their building permit application, the grant amount that was advanced would simply be returned back to the CIP reserve. And then the balance of any development charges or fees that were paid out of pocket by the applicant would simply be returned back to them if the permit was canceled. So just moving on to the next steps after tonight's meeting. Following tonight's meeting, staff will continue to consider any comments that are received through the public engagement process, as well as any technical comments that might be received, because this was circulated to our internal groups, public bodies, agencies, and also the province. And staff are targeting March 23rd to bring a staff report forward for planning committee's consideration of the proposed amendments. And any comments that are received would be addressed in the staff, identified and addressed in the staff report, and would form part of staff's recommendation on the proposed amendments. And that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you, Mayor Lehman, and members of Planning Committee. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will just say for the members of the public that might be watching again, if you do wish to speak tonight, you need to email or call right away to cityclerks@barrie.ca or call 797-5353 so that staff can get you up into this call. We do not need to have a separate update, as Mr. Romero has indicated. This is a staff-initiated series of amendments to the CIP. Ironically, since we're all ward councillors for this one, we can all ask questions of clarification. So I will take the opportunity. I'll first just double check with the clerk. Have we had any member of the public asked to speak?
No, Mayor Lehman, we have not.
Okay. Any questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee? Councillor Congo.
If I may, a question of clarification. This doesn't speak to the budget, but we did reduce the budget from, I believe, $1 million to $400,000. So looking to see, while it supports 3 areas under the CIP versus redevelopment, affordable housing, and heritage, I'm assuming funding is equally split or follows the same ratio it may have been applied prior.
Mr. Gamero.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Congo. Yes, that's correct. It's going to follow the distribution that's identified in the CIP, which I believe is 5% for heritage. I think it's 40% for redevelopment and then 55% for affordable housing. And that's already been allocated. I can share the balance for the CIP reserve right now if you want, or if you could always email me after the meeting and I can provide you with those figures as well.
And a quick follow-up, if I may, Mr. Gamero, is I have the information, thank you. I think I had the budget stood, but part of this consultation and engagement around the review of the CIP, I'm assuming that it's out of scope to look at a restructuring of the proportion of the budget? Or is that something that can be engaged on?
That would also be subject, that would require another amendment if we wanted to change how we're allocating the funds, but I think that's a larger discussion we'd have to have internally with management, and we could certainly report back in the staff report if you'd like.
Yeah, if I may, if it's not out of line, I'm personally indicating that it might be helpful to understand, considering affordable housing is one of our priorities. If staff are coming back with any type of recommendation in that staff report that speaks to abilities to meet some of our strategies, because we've made such a reduction in that budget allocation, what we can do that will have an impact, or what that results in around the number of applications we will consider, even though we've moved from 3 cycles to 2, how many applications, what proportion of the budget will we probably see. I think we had last year 20 applications, 17 that were approved. through this program. I'd love to appreciate, depending on how that budget is split, what maximum number of applications would be supported for affordable housing.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly investigate that and report back for sure.
Great, thank you.
Yep. No
Thanks,
problem.
Councillor Congo. Any other questions of clarification from members of Planning Committee? Okay, seeing none. Last check, Madam Clerk, anybody call in or email to want to speak to this?
No, Mayor Lehman, there's nobody.
Okay, I will declare this public meeting concluded. Thank you, Mr. Gamero. I look forward to hearing or seeing the staff reports on those changes as well. Members of Council, we didn't go through the consent agenda before the public meetings. Apologies for that. I'll quickly do it now since there's only 2 reports. Just let me know if you want either of them held. The first staff report on the agenda is with regards to a zoning bylaw amendment for Coral Sophia Lane Housing Inc. That's 113 and 117 Bayfield and 6, 8, 10, and 12 Sophia Street East. Does anyone wish to hold that staff report? Okay, seeing none, that one is approved on consent. The second one is a temporary use extension for 164 Innisfil Street. This is for 191-1940 Ontario Inc. or operating as Liquidation Nation. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you want to hold that one? Okay, since that is the only item that was held, over to you, Deputy Mayor Ward.
I will put it on the floor. I don't really have any questions on this particular report, but I'm just curious for staff to ask staff whether, is this something we enforce proactively or do we react to complaints for industrial or commercial uses in industrial areas?
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward. In this instance, this was definitely a response to zoning compliance matters, and this is the way that the owner has tried to address the zoning compliance. And for other situations, it really is a mix. So we absolutely respond to complaints, but sometimes our officers are out and or any of us really, quite frankly, are out and see things and we investigate further. So it is a bit of a hybrid for sure.
Okay, just one more supplemental. How do we determine if something's a commercial use in industrial? I mean, is there sometimes hard to define, or how do we determine that?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward, it really does come down to the zoning bylaw. So there are in some of the industrial zones, some commercial uses that are permitted in the industrial zones, and it does depend on which industrial zone the property is. In this instance, retail, like pure retail uses, tends to be the one that is where commercial uses tend to be out of place in industrial businesses or industrial areas. So retail uses are accessory retail uses are permitted in industrial areas, but it's limited to a percentage of the floor area. And so there are some limitations on it. So, so it really is tied to the zoning bylaw, and there are provisions for, you know, some commercial uses, but there are limitations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Ward. Any other questions on the staff report? It's on the floor as printed. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question on it. Those in favor of the motion, please indicate. Anyone opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Brings us to inquiries. Deputy Mayor Ward, any inquiries of staff?
I have none.
Nope. Members of Planning Committee, any inquiries of planning staff? Seeing none, this completes Planning Committee's agenda. It was a quick one, 29 minutes. Thank you, members of Planning Committee, and we will see you all on Monday night for City Council. CIO Press, are you popping in to catch us before we drop offline, or just so that we can see your...
I was just showing off my my mug, Mayor Lehman. I apologize. I didn't mean to distract you.
Not in the slightest. Thanks for popping in. Okay, everyone, we'll see you on Monday night for City Council. Good night.